Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
Today, we're tearing into a stack of sources, really plunging headfirst into the world of stablecoins.
Yeah, quite the topic. We've got some interesting stuff here, excerpts from Anthony Pompliano, and an article focusing on one specific stablecoin, Metal Dollar or XMD.
Right. And our mission really is to unpack what these things are. You know, why have they just exploded onto the scene? How do they actually work, sort of under the hood?
And what's their potential impact? Not just, in crypto, but on finance more broadly. And maybe even beyond that.
Yeah. And honestly, looking through this material, some things really jumped out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just the sheer size of this market now is, well, staggering. And how they seem to tackle some, really basic problems with old school banking.
Definitely. And that bit about U.S. government debt, that caught my eye, too.
We'll get to that. It's quite a claim.
It really is. It's a space that's just moving incredibly fast, isn't it?
Yeah.
And these sources give some pretty sharp takes on what's driving it all. Okay, so let's dive in. First things first. Stablecoins. What are they really, and what's fueling this massive growth we're seeing?
Oh, the sources make the scale crystal clear. Pompliano points out Tether, just one issuer, crossed $150 billion.
Wow.
They've exploded. They are huge. I think Tether just crossed $150 billion just in Tether. And so then you add in Circle and Athena and all these different stablecoins. They're flying now. And the whole idea is you're selling one of the greatest product market fit products in the world. You're selling US dollars to people who want US dollars. What could be better? You're just doing it in this new technology form factor that the government hasn't created yet. And so you're taking dollars, you've put it in a new wrapper, right? And then you're giving it to people to use.
And it would make cross like international transactions much easier because there's
international, domestic, purchases, money movements, trading, settlement, whatever. It's all better and it's cheaper and it's faster. And so one of the crazy things is it sounds stupid, but how many businesses in the world or I got to get to the bank. I got to do the wire by 2 p.m. I got to get to my computer because I got to do it by 5 p.m. Whatever, right? Chill, 24/7. Where we can move money now. We don't have these arbitrary hours of operations. On Saturday, you want to do something, you can't do it. It's crazy. So where the world is going is that we are going to, quote unquote, tokenize all of these assets. Now, again, it doesn't mean that if you take the Amazon stock and you take it from an electronic QSIP to a digital token, it's still the same stock. There's no, in my opinion, there's no real massive arbitrage opportunity or, money making, whatever. So all the people who are the tokenization stuff is quote unquote shitcoin. I just think of it as it's a new technology that has nothing to do with crypto, actually, right? Crypto to me is there's Bitcoin and there's a bunch of these altcoins, all that kind of stuff. But if you simply take the dollars or the stocks or whatever, you put them onto rails that now can trade globally 24/7 with liquidity at all time, that is valuable to a subset of the population. And so I think that's where the world's going. Stablecoins are just getting us there. Now, what Haggerty said, he was on CNBC earlier this week, I think yesterday, he said that he believes that stablecoin issuers will be the largest holders of U.S. treasuries in the world, more than any foreign country or anything. Stablecoin issuers are going to end up saving the U.S. Treasury market. That's my personal view. Haggerty seems to agree. Says they're going to be the largest holders of U.S. Treasuries in the world. And now, with a little kerfuffle in the Senate.
Just Tether.
Just Tether. And then you add in Circle and the others. I mean, you're talking about a truly enormous market.
That puts it up there with major global companies, or even the GDP of some countries.
It really does. And the reason for it, according to the material, sounds almost, deceptively simple.
Which is?
They're selling US dollars, but, delivered through a new tech layer.
Okay. So take something everyone already wants, the US dollar, its stability, its usefulness.
Or proven demand. Massive demand.
And just wrap it in new technology so it works differently. Like putting a bestseller onto super fast global delivery rails.
That's a great way to put it. That's essentially the product market fit they found. You're taking dollars held in reserve somewhere and issuing digital tokens that represent them on a blockchain or, some other distributed ledger. Giving people a way to hold and use dollars digitally globally maybe without eating a traditional bank account for every single step.
Exactly. That's a big part of the appeal.
Okay, so what are the actual, tangible benefits? Why use a stablecoin dollar instead of, the dollars I see in my online bank portal?
Yeah, this is where the sources really highlight the practical side. Stablecoins, because they run on these new digital rails, they're often way cheaper and faster.
Cheaper and faster, that always gets attention.
Especially for moving money, internationally, domestically, for trading, settling payments. The cost and speed differences can be huge.
Right, I can see that being a big deal for businesses or anyone sending money across borders. Those fees add up.
They really do. And Pompliano brings up another point that seems so basic, but it's a massive constraint in the legacy system. Banking hours.
Oh, yeah. The 9 to 5, Monday to Friday problem.
Exactly. Try sending a big wire transfer late on a Friday afternoon.
Forget about it. Not happening till Monday, if you're lucky.
Precisely. Stablecoins, though, they live on these networks that just don't clock out. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, always on.
That ability to move value instantly, anytime. That's a fundamental change, isn't it? For liquidity, efficiency.
It really is. So it's not just about, buying Bitcoin or something volatile.
No, it sounds like it's more about upgrading the actual pipes that money flows through.
That's a key point the sources emphasize. Pompliano talks about tokenization, this idea of putting all sorts of assets, dollars, stocks, bonds, whatever, onto these digital rails.
Okay.
He frames it as a technological step forward in itself. It's not inherently about speculation. It's about creating a system where assets can be moved, traded, settled globally, instantly, around the clock.
So it's the network and the speed, the improved function that's the value add, not necessarily that the underlying thing, like a dollar, suddenly changes value just because it's a token.
Exactly. Yes. And stablecoins, especially the dollar-pegged ones, are kind of the leading edge of this for currency. They're showing what's possible when assets can live and move on these global digital networks.
Okay, that paints a clear picture. Huge demand for digital dollars delivered faster, cheaper, 24/7. Got it. So let's zoom in on that specific example from the sources. Metal dollar, XMD. What does the article say makes that one stand out?
Right. So the article on metal dollar XMD, it lays out its specific design. It's presented as fully collateralized.
Meaning there's real stuff backing it up.
Yeah. For every XMD out there, there's supposed to be underlying assets held in reserve to keep that one-to-one peg with a US dollar. Stability is key. And it's built on something called the XPR Network, which the source highlights as being designed for speed, usability, and importantly, compliance.
Okay, fully collateralized. And that one-to-one peg, those feel crucial for trust, right? Making sure it actually is stable.
Yeah, absolutely fundamental. It needs to be a reliable digital store of value. But the really big emphasis in the article is how XMD is specifically aiming to be a bridge.
A bridge between what?
Between DeFi, decentralized finance, financial services on the blockchain without the usual middlemen and the traditional banking world. TradFi.
Okay, interesting angle. How does it plan to build that bridge? That seems like a tough gap to cross.
Well, the article makes a point of saying compliance is, and I think this is the quote, baked directly into its code.
Baked in? How?
It's built on that XPR network, which is apparently designed from the ground up to be KYC ML ready.
Know your customer and anti-money laundering. Okay, so the standard checks banks and financial institutions have to do.
Exactly those. So by building that compliance capability right into the network, right into the stablecoin itself from the very beginning, XMD is positioned as something that can easily, or more easily, integrate with regulated players.
Like banks, credit unions, existing fintech companies.
Right. It's not trying to bolt on compliance later. The idea is it's built to meet those standards from day one.
That does sound like maybe a different approach than some of the earlier crypto assets, really positioning itself for institutional use by getting the regulatory piece right up front.
Seems to be the strategy. And the article also mentions those other benefits we talked about, fast transactions and actually feeless transactions on the XPR network.
Feeless. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, makes it practical for, everyday payments, microtransactions, sending money internationally without worrying about high fees cutting into it. And it's also designed to fit into this broader metal ecosystem, other financial services built by the same group.
Okay, so the picture they're painting of XMD is stable, fast, feeless, and critically built for compliance, aiming to be the kind of digital dollar that can operate comfortably in both the old financial world and this new decentralized one.
That's definitely the vision presented in the source. It's intended to power things like replacing old payment rails, enabling credit directly on the blockchain, instant cross-border payments for businesses, even acting as programmable cash in smart contracts.
Smart contracts being those automated agreements on the blockchain.
Exactly. And that compliance focus is positioned as the key to unlocking these uses at scale, especially within regulated environments.
Yeah, reading through this, it feels like these sources aren't just describing some niche crypto thing. They're talking about something potentially foundational for digital money. The article uses phrases like stablecoins are eating finance, becoming a foundation of modern finance.
You do. And they point out, while governments are talking about CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, stablecoins are already here. They're operating now, they're scaling now, they're solving actual problems today.
Okay, now let's get to that really eye-opening claim you mentioned earlier, the U.S. Treasuries thing. What did the source say about that?
Right, this comes from the Pompliano material. He references comments, I believe, from Senator Bill Hagerty. And the view cited is pretty stark. Stablecoin issuers could potentially become the single largest holders of U.S. Treasuries globally.
Wait, the largest? Bigger than, China or Japan? Historically huge holders?
That's the assertion discussed, yeah. The logic goes like this. Stablecoins, especially the ones pegged one-to-one to the dollar, need to hold massive reserves to back that peg.
Right, makes sense. They need the collateral.
And where do you put those reserves if you need safety and liquidity? U.S. government debt treasuries are a prime spot. So as the stablecoin market balloons hundreds of billions, potentially trillions...
The amount of treasuries they'd need to hold just gets enormous.
Exactly. The sheer volume could theoretically surpass what major foreign countries hold.
Wow. Okay, so the rise of stablecoins isn't just a tech story or a finance story. It has these potentially huge macroeconomic ripple effects on the market for U.S. debt itself. The source even used wording like stablecoins might end up saving the U.S. Treasury market.
It's a pretty provocative thought, isn't it? But if you follow the growth trajectory and the logic of reserve management, the amount of treasuries they could end up holding becomes large enough to be a major force in global bond markets. It just underscores the scale these things are reaching.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Based on this deep dive, pulling from Pompliano and the XMD article, what are the main takeaways here?
Well, first, I think, is just the undeniable scale. This is a massive, fast-growing market. And the reason seems clear. They're delivering a high-demand product, digital U.S. dollars, using tech that offers real advantages over the old ways.
And those advantages are tangible, right? Much faster, much cheaper transactions.
And that 247 availability, that's huge, getting rid of the old banking hour constraints.
Right. And the core idea, tokenization, it's bigger than just crypto speculation. It's about putting assets, starting with dollars via stablecoins, onto these efficient, global, always-on digital networks.
Yeah, a fundamental infrastructure shift. And the specific example, Metal Dollar, XMD, it shows one approach, prioritizing compliance right from the start, baking it in, aiming to bridge traditional finance and DeFi while still offering that speed, stability, and those feeless transactions.
Built on that KYC-ML-ready network.
Exactly. And finally, there's that potential for really large-scale economic impact. The idea that stablecoin issuers could become dominant players in the U.S. Treasury market. That's a significant potential shift in global finance.
Okay, so here's something for you, the listener, to chew on. Given everything we've discussed, the explosive growth, the increasing technical sophistication and compliance focus like we see with XMD, and this potentially enormous role in global markets like U.S. Treasuries, how fundamentally might this reshape money and banking, in the next few years?
Yeah, what does it actually mean when these non-state digital entities could potentially hold such huge chunks of a major government's debt? It's a fascinating question about the future structure of finance.